Night Live at Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road in 295. We've got an hour of Jacksonville basketball talk for you coming up here until 7 o'clock on the 1010XL airwaves here this evening. And we got some great things to talk about as the Dolphins took care of business, winning back-to-back games, one on the road, one at home last week. And, of course, joined, as always, by head coach Jordan Mincy on the program, and excited to have him back with us here. And it's always nice when we're sitting here getting ready to talk about a couple of wins from last week. Right, Coach?
I know that's right.
And it was two games that were interesting in the fact that you go on the road on Thursday, right? You're trying to kind of wash off the week before that was. We were sitting here a week ago today talking about how does this team put two disappointing, weird kind of losses behind them. You go out on the road on Thursday night against Stetson last week, end up winning by 9 points, but you have to do it without your leading scorer, Robert McRae V. Your second leading scorer, Zemi Wokeji, doesn't score a point in 8 minutes, and yet you really, the team was able to, for the majority of that game, control the flow of how the game went. Stetson tried to make kind of a late rally, late push, but ultimately you kind of saw what life was like without the contributions of guys like that, right? And it really forced some other guys to step up.
Yeah, we talked about it as a team today. When you look at our box score, the thing that we love so much is, we outside of maybe Rob and Zemi, those two guys, we have a bunch of guys who are in, anywhere between, 9 to 6 points a game. And so depending on what game it is, we have multiple guys who stepped up throughout the course of the year. And so the one thing that we always ask ourselves as a staff, when you look at the box score, you want to have a bunch of guys that you never know are going to go off. Mm-hmm. And so, you know what? It's been good for us to understand, we can win, especially late in the season, and knowing that if Rob is off, then guess what? We have other guys who can step up. If Zimi's not having one of those games where he's on from three, then we're allowed to have a guy like Kendall Munson who can go inside and score, or Steph Payne who, scored very well in the paint last game as well. And so it's just it's a breath of fresh air. Like I said, just to have great character young men, but at the same time to be able to have, multiple weapons that you go to throughout the course of the game.
And you saw it a little bit different between the two games combined in the fact that on Thursday night, and to me, it looked like, okay, the first couple of minutes of that game, guys are looking around and they're like, wait a second, Rob's not out here. Okay, what are we going to do to find our way? And then they really did seem to find a nice rhythm. On Saturday, Rob was out there, but he was far from 100%, working his way back. But the guys were able to, and maybe more importantly for him, he was able to figure out, hey, listen, I can coexist with these guys, help in other ways, play within myself without needing to be, a superhero at times and really trust the pieces around me.
Yeah, credit to Rob. We didn't know if he was going to go, and, he told us, hey, Coach, I know I want our guys to have the opportunity to win. I know how important it is for us to try to win a championship, and so he said, hey, look, put me in a limited role. I'll go out and do the best I can for you guys, and, credit to him for going out there and putting some pressure on himself. But at the same time, being able to have kind of that Stetson experience where he wasn't out there and our guys knew he wasn't going to be able to suit up. We had some younger guys that stepped up. You see Chris and the way he played as a freshman, but then at the same time, a guy like Kendall Munson who was able to kind of, put the scoring load on his shoulders. And so for us to see that we have multiple guys who can carry this team, like I said, it's very encouraging.
Does it feel encouraging as well at this point in the season to see your team have things shuffled up and be able to respond in a positive manner, as opposed to, right, like, knock on wood, there's some sort of injury down the line, and then you're not, you're like, oh, we got to start this guy who's not used to being in this spot, and then he comes out and he's maybe just uncomfortable with the situation that presents itself. But it seems like your group, no matter starter, bench player, 25 minutes, 35 minutes, 15 minutes, it seems like they're all pretty willing to interchangeably do whatever it takes.
Yeah, just credit to our staff. We had multiple guys, Anagan Brown, Enrico Borio, and then Simon Wheeler. Those are guys that, coming into the season, we had high expectations for. And all three of those young men, had injuries throughout the course of the time. You look at a guy like Enrico at Austin Peay, came out one of his best games, and then, unfortunately he has an accident. And so he eased out for the season. But when you look at, certain people stepping up, you look at Ken Jackson being able to come in and do what he does well and really stepping up on the defensive side of the ball. Or you look at a guy like Donovan Rivers who gives us, important minutes here and there, especially when Steph Payne, is either playing injured or trying to, find himself throughout the course of the game. And so for us, you know how it is in tournament time. You never know what's going to happen.
Nope.
Somebody can foul out, a guy could be off, and so to be able to know you can play different ways, it's exciting to know that this late in the season.
He's head coach Jordan Mincy. I'm Scott Manzi. We're live at Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road and 295 for True Talk with Coach Mincy, taking you up until 7 o'clock tonight. Jacksonville basketball talk as the Dolphins get ready to embark on a road trip here this week and are fresh off of 2 wins. Standings look right now, Jacksonville, one of those teams, all sitting at the top. There's a lot of them up there, though, and so there's still a lot of basketball left, a lot to be decided before the end of this season. This is far from a runaway, and it should be an incredible end to the year as far as interest from an outsider's perspective. From a coaching perspective, it's probably even more stressful as it dials down and things get a little tighter, and each game matters just a little bit that much more. But it should be fun, and I'll mention it now while we're talking about it. Thursday night, Jacksonville is at Central Arkansas, and there is a watch party at Strings Sports Brewery in Springfield. It is the official launch of the Fins Up Golden Lager. The game will be on the TVs in the sports bar, and great food and great beer and great camaraderie. So come on out if you're not doing anything Thursday night, want to watch the game, want to celebrate and enjoy it in the company of fellow Dolphin fans. It'll be a great environment. That is Strings Sports Brewery in Springfield. So that's a bit of a tongue twister there, and it tripped me up. But they will be hosting on Thursday night, 7:30 tip-off. So mark your calendars now for that. Looking back again last week, you have highlighted a couple of different players and their abilities to step up in the absence of your 2 leading scorers, especially on Thursday. The guy on Thursday who was the star of the show was Kendall Munson. He's a transfer, first-year member of the program, a guy who we really watched kind of grow into his role, it feels like, this year. And he is playing with a level of confidence now that, we didn't see back in November or December or things like that. What have you seen from him as far as growth on both ends of the floor and how he prepares?
Kendall's a very sound young man. When you talk about just, being around him, the way that he carries himself day in, day out, we always talk about, he comes every day as if he's going to work. He understands, what the goal is. He knows what we're trying to get accomplished in practice. And he never, wavered as far as being a guy who's very coachable. Whether it's, hey, Kendall, we need you to come off the bench, be a reserve, or, hey, we need you to kind of be in the starting lineup and do whatever needs to be done. The one thing that we, love so much about him is his ability to be able to, hey, coach, what do you need me to do? You want me to score right now? Okay, I can go out there and score. Yeah. Hey, coach, is it a game-winning rebound? I got it, coach. I'm not a great free throw shooter, but, coach, I'll make sure that I make the closing free throws. And so to be able to have a dude that has that type of confidence, that understands who he is as a person, it's a luxury as a head coach to have.
He's kind of a chameleon, isn't he?
He is.
He'll take on whatever it needs to be that point in time, not just in the season, but in the game, in the moment. And where did – I thought it was fascinating seeing the first half versus the second half because he goes off, has a big first half, he's scoring the ball well. All of a sudden, Stetson's crashing him every time he catches the ball. He's triple-teamed at times, but he was very, very good at then – obviously there's open guys in those situations. He was able to pass it out, share it, and there's a lot of guys that would sit there and be like, well, I'm hot right now. I want to keep shooting, but, man, he is unselfish, isn't he?
Yeah, he's super unselfish. We just watching, some Central Arkansas film today, and we were talking about some of the plays he made in that game and how excited he is, when his teammates are scoring. A lot of times teams have been going zone. Our last game versus Bellarmine, we played majority zone throughout the course of the game, and so be able to see, we put him in the high post. He was making passes, making, different plays for his teammates. And every time his teammates scored, he was so happy for his teammates. To be able to have a guy like that, it's so rare, especially in the transfer portal age. You don't never know who you're going to have, who you're recruiting. And so it's kind of like your speed dating. And so when you get him here, you're like, oh, okay, hey. And but it was awesome, man, to be able to, know that he came and chose here over a lot of different places and to see how he's playing. He's had career highs, and since he's been playing in college since he's this year, and so for him, he's enjoying himself.
Yeah, his latest career high was 23 on Thursday, and then Stephon Payne III follows that right up on Saturday. He scored the first 4 times he touched the ball on Saturday and didn't slow down much after that. He only missed 1 shot the entire game. He was 8 of 9 from the field, perfect from the free throw line. And I know that he ended up with a good stat line when it was all said and done on Thursday at Stetson, but you could kind of see his body language. He was frustrated some in how things were going, especially early in that game. Where did you see him kind of settle down in the back half of the Stetson game to give himself the opportunity to have that good game on Saturday against Bellarmine?
So, Jakari Spence, our point guard, and Steph are extremely close, but they're also very critical of one another as well. And so, oftentimes in practice, Jakari's always challenging him, saying, hey, look, man, I'm not going to pass you the ball if you're not going to try to score or you're not going to be efficient around the rim. A lot of times he felt as if, Steph was getting the ball in the post. He's just throwing it up there trying to get an offensive rebound instead of taking his time, settling in, and then really concentrating on his craft. And so I think, he's one of the guys that we talk about who's developed in his time here at Jacksonville. He was a guy who was a primary scorer over his left shoulder, and now you see he's scoring in a multitude of different ways. And so for us to be able to see his growth, to see his maturation as a man, it's been huge for us.
How much of that is just him having enough confidence in a variety of moves to know, like, hey, when the ball comes to me, here's what I'm going to. So as opposed to, you see so many big guys that catch it and then they start thinking. and then all of a sudden the defense collapses and you're not going to have a lot of success there. But it seemed like he was very decisive on Saturday in what he wanted to do.
Yeah, he and I'll shout out this. Troy Pierce, our post coach, does an unbelievable job of just constantly getting those guys to understand what their go-to moves are. And so, Steph, a lot of time, he's a guy who's extremely unselfish. He wasn't really looking to score. And so we really, this summer tried to dial it back and just say, hey, look, these are a couple plays that we feel like you can score out of. And at the same time, you need to be able to have these certain level of moves or finishes. And so I also shout out Mike Covington, one of our other assistant coaches, who has been on his push-up drill because we have so many missed layups in some of our previous games. And so I think having that type of motivation behind you and that reinforcement can also help you go 8 for 9 from the field.
Well, yeah, Steph didn't have to do many push-ups after that game, which is great to see. The last guys I want to highlight here in this opening segment tonight, the freshmen, you mentioned them a little bit earlier. You had 4 freshmen coming in, and you felt great about all of them. You're down to just 2 because of unfortunate injuries, but those 2 have really made the most of their opportunities, growing, getting better. Chris Arias, watching his confidence and how he plays. Both games last week, he's got the ball in his hands late in the game. It's not in the balance, but it's like hanging right on the precipice of being in the balance. And he says, hey, I'll take this shot. I'll make this shot. And the confidence that he is showing as a freshman is not something you see a whole lot in college basketball, especially not at this level anymore. So, I mean, his growth has been tremendous to see, and KJ Jackson, too.
Yeah, you know what? Both those young men played at 2 great high schools in the area. They're local products. And so when you talk about just being able to see how well coached they were in high school, it was an easy transition for them to come play for us at JU. And so they both have great families. Both of those young men's fathers are extremely hands-on when it comes to their development, not only as basketball players but as men. And so it makes it easier as a head coach. If I say something to KJ, I know that his dad is going to back what I say. I know that Chris's father is going to back what I say. And so they're extremely hard on their sons, and they want their sons to perform at an extremely high level.
We talked about it a little bit before on this show in the previous weeks about how, like, hey, those guys taking their lumps in the non-conference, it wasn't pretty at times, but it was imperative for them to have the understanding and the confidence that they have now. I mean, there were times in which you would see those guys have a great night, and then you'd look and you'd be like, where were they the last 5 games? And it's like, oh, they played, but either the confidence wasn't there, or they didn't have the legs under them, or they didn't know what the matchups were. I mean, where have you seen them grow in their preparation off the court to be able to maximize their opportunities on the court here in the back half of the season? So
a lot of times, Stuckey Mosley, he's our 4th assistant. A lot of times you can find, Chris and KJ in there, working out with them. It's a lot of time for their workouts. Not only just shooting on their own, but at the same time they do a lot of film on their own. Just being able to kind of see from their mistakes and learn from their mistakes. And the one thing that I love about them, because they were coached at elite level in high school, is that they're very coachable. And so when you tell them something, they don't look at you with a freshman that thinks they have all the answers. There are oftentimes to come to your office and say, hey, coach, I know you said this in practice. Can you show me on film, or can you reinforce what you were saying so I can understand, because I didn't understand when we were going live. And so to be able to know that, they're not really scared. They understand that, hey, coach, you threw us out there early. We played a lot of minutes, especially in the non-conference. They feel like they're really prepared, and they were prepared coming into conference play.
How nice is that? A couple of 18, 19-year-olds who don't feel like they have all the answers in the world, right?
Oh, man, it's the best. It's the best.
And I'm sure you mentioned their fathers and their upbringing and their family backgrounds, but that is a tribute to what they came up into and understanding. Maybe I gotta trust that some people before me they're guiding me in the right direction. Ultimately. All right. Well, we've looked back at the last week, looked at some of the positives of what has helped Jacksonville to 2 more wins to get to where they are now at 9-3 in the ASUN Conference and tied atop the Atlantic Sun Conference standings. But how are these guys handling all of the challenges at a mental perspective? We're going to take a look at that next. We've got a special guest joining us on the other side. You're listening to True Talk with Coach Mincy, live from Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road in 295 here on 1010XL. True Talk continuing here on this Monday night, live at Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road and 295, taking you up until 7 o'clock this evening here on the 1010XL airwaves. And a reminder that tomorrow is JU Day on 1010XL. That is 4 of the fine daytime programming shows will be live at the Kinney Lounge for the auction for athletics. We'll have much more details later, but be sure you're tuning in from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. because there's going to be special guests as the shows air live from JU and are working on auctioning off great gifts. If you'd like to check those out now while you're listening in, text JU Day to 76278 or visit JUDolphins.com and click on the pop-up banner, and you can see much more about that. All right, Jacksonville fresh off of a couple of wins, one on the road, one at home, still in a 4-way tie for first place in the Atlantic Sun Conference. As we get down into the nitty-gritty of the season, you've got 2 weeks, 6 games basically in 2 weeks' time, a little over 2 weeks' time, and it is going to be a grind the rest of the way, and you've got to make sure that the guys are in the best physical and mental state for that. And so our next guest is Demarion Jeter, who is an athlete mental health and sport performance counselor here at JU. And first and foremost, mental health, something we've heard a lot about, especially in the last 5 years. But how have you, from your perspective, seen it kind of grow into this sort of understanding and acceptedness, especially in a field like athletics?
I would say definitely started, if I can remember, from like the NBA standpoint, where a couple years ago you seen Kevin Love come out and speak about his struggles with mental health, and then also you followed up with DeMar DeRozan talk about his struggles with mental health. And I think since then there's kind of more buy-in from the athletic realm of kind of like, okay, this is important, this impacts performance. And then it just seemed like a trickle-down effect that kind of reached into like the collegiate level as well and like the high school level. So I think they were really big in driving that.
Let's take a step back and take a look at really what got you to this point. Former college basketball player, you played at Longwood. Injuries kept you there for probably longer than you anticipated. You end up with 6 years there, but it gave you an opportunity to continue your studies and grow and learn. Did you consider coaching at any point? I know you did a student coaching year when you were recovering from injury. How did you end up kind of going from basketball player to I think I'm interested in this other side of how things work in athletics?
Well, very long story, but I'll tell the short version.
All right. Yeah, we only got no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
To start my career, I think like most Division I athletes, I thought, okay, my dream is NBA. And if NBA, then it's overseas as like kind of like the backup plan. But then throughout those injuries, I had my own sort of like identity crisis and just going through like 2 years without playing a sport I love, and growing up, that's like the fastest way I knew how to take care of my family. So going through that kind of 2 year span and not being able to participate in a sport I love, almost like not knowing how to kind of live on my day-to-day basis. And I could see how it started to affect me and kind of change me mentally. And luckily I had some people at Longwood that really supported me, that encouraged me to go to personal counseling myself. that kind of helped kind of change my viewpoint on things. And then the realization that once I became older, like I didn't want to pursue a professional career anymore, and just thinking about ways I could give back to the sport and stay attached to the sport, and then having the realization that there's not a lot of people as therapists who look like me in the field, and who's better to help a Division I athlete than a former Division I athlete, and being the 6'7" as a therapist is very uncommon. So giving them someone they look like that they can speak to as well.
Yeah, it might be a little intimidating if it was, the little lady down the street coming in to meet with you, but meeting with fellow college athletes, especially, in this landscape we're talking about basketball specifically, you meet with other athletes as well, but seeing someone, like you said, that looks like them or experienced things that they experienced, I mean, how are you able to kind of leverage that to help put them at ease and let them know that, hey, listen, at the end of the day, this isn't a sign of weakness. This isn't a sign of, I'm here to help make you stronger.
Yeah. So I'll definitely empathizing with kind of the day-to-day experience, just like the sacrifices, like the being away from family, no more having winter break, no more sometimes missing Christmas, missing Thanksgiving, those things. Like your summer is now dictated by something else that you don't really have control over. And then also the transition to like those times where you do become injured, unfortunately, as an athlete, and just the challenges of having to compete every single day, and how every single day is kind of a test. And just like kind of the pressures that live with that and like comes with that, and the societal expectations, the social expectations of it, those things like that, and just the day-to-day grind, and just letting them know that there's another person that's been through it with them, and that there is a other side of it. Like once your playing career is done, and as while you're going through it, there's someone to kind of help you get through it. That has kind of done it himself at a level as well.
Demarion Jeter is our guest. He is an athletic mental health and sports performance counselor here at Jacksonville University, working with men's basketball, working with a handful of other teams. And this is something I know that JU has invested in a lot over the last couple of years as they try to continue to provide the best experience, collective, whole experience for student athletes at the university. Coach Mincy, having someone like this who is someone who can be an asset to your program in multiple ways, right, as a former basketball player, but also as someone who does counseling, how have you been able to utilize what Demarion brings to the table for your program and helping your team out?
Jeter is he's allowed for us to have a lot of our success we've had this season. His ability to be able to be around our young men, talking to them daily. Last season, one of the things that, our AD, Alex Rick Gilbert, and then our deputy AD, Rick Cantor, what they wanted to identify, they wanted to get somebody who could really help our young men. I felt like at times last year I was trying to coach, and I was trying to be, a counselor in so many words. And so to be able to have someone who's a professional in that area, to understands what a young man is going through day in and day out, and can speak the same language, but at the same time can be honest and transparent. And I'll say this, he just doesn't help our athletes. He also helps the coaches. He allows for us to see the game in a totally different manner. And so a lot of times at halftime, people don't know he's in there with me. I'm saying, hey, look, what are you seeing? And he's like, hey, look, bench energy or certain aspects of the game that we need to look at that go outside of the X and the O's.
How much when it comes to, you say you wear like a wearable fitness device right now, and you wake up in the morning and it tells you what's your readiness score for the day, how much can I exert from a physical standpoint? How much do you try to help with the mental standpoint of letting the coaches know, hey, this guy's going through something right now, we might need to ease back on him a little bit for a day or so, or, hey, he's ready to be pushed, let's give him a little bit more?
I think it's more so a day-to-day balance of trying to figure that out, of knowing when it is the right time to push a person, when it is the right time to kind of back away. Because at any given day, the mental is like a training as well. It's like not only that's like the physical, like you work out, you kind of lift. The mental thing is, okay, the mental stressor of that day-to-day grind. Can you continue to kind of push through? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the times if you can have your mental right, then the physical will follow. And kind of challenging the guys to, even though if you're not feeling the best, sometimes you still have a job to do at the end of the day. So always kind of encourage them that time. And then when we outside of practice, then it's okay, let's have that emotional kind of conversation to kind of have everything in kind of perspective, so you can feel as good as you need to kind of for the next day or for that moment.
And is there like a way to separate that physically and mentally, right, from the practice, from the surface that they're so used to basketball-related things, to kind of take them out of that so that they feel like they're actually addressing something differently?
Well, I would say I don't think you really can separate it.
Okay.
I think even though we like to try to separate it, I think it's all involved as where I think as let's say coach-wise or standpoint, we want our players to try to compartmentalize, where we know sometimes players in practice thinking about, okay, I'm having issues with my relationship right now.
Yeah, right.
And we just want to leave that kind of aside. So I think that it all goes hand in hand with one another.
How much of this is balancing who they are today in the moment and who they are going to be in the future, right? We hear so much about when athletes' careers end, then they have this, like you mentioned earlier, like an existential crisis. Who am I as a person at this point in time? I'm no longer what I have been for so long. And helping them realize maybe, hey, there's always more to you than you bounce a ball and you shoot it, or you do whatever else it is for your sport.
Yeah. So I would say for that, I always try to talk about like the process. So at the beginning of every year, each team wants to win a championship, but throughout the season is always like a process to accomplish that. You need to do that, and the way that impacts your life, like when you engage in the process every day, there are certain habits that you'll just naturally pick up and it become a part of your routine. So then when you either targeting to kind of win a championship or transitioning out of kind of athletic world or transition to a professional role or to a family life, you've already accumulated those habits, those day-to-day things that will help in that process to kind of accomplish those things.
Coach, what's one of just the biggest things that you've seen differently? You talked about already how you don't have to try to play counselor and head coach now, and that has been just a weight off your shoulder, and it gets the professional involved in a good way. But what have you seen as far as how your team has responded and reacted to what has kind of come in this new wave?
Well, I think, any of our fans who've seen kind of, the last 2 seasons I would use, for example, you'll see that our teams handle adversity in totally different ways. Last year, certain events would occur, and our team was never able to really bounce back. And ever since Jeter's been integrated into our program, you can see the recovery time with our team, with our players, individuals, whether it's, hey, a bad call by a ref, them being able to internalize, understand, hey, this is something that I can't control. Let me control what I can control. What's in my power to control. And then the other thing is being able to have helpful communication tools and understanding how to communicate with one another. This generation, a lot of times they struggle with that, and so he's able to give them certain tools. He's able to teach them how to necessarily have, those hard conversations and not feel, awkward or insecure or have to use or raise their voice to be angry and to get their point across.
Right.
And so for us, that's a blessing.
All the tools in the toolbox, right? Use them all.
Try to.
Can you walk me through just what your typical day, week, whatever might look like working with the men's basketball program and where you are, where you're connecting with the athletes, things like that?
Mm-hmm. So for me, if I'm able to kind of attend practice, I always try to show up at practice. And if you see me at practice, I'm more so in the background, just kind of observing, just kind of having that lens where I can kind of have a different perspective from things. And then throughout practice, I may say something to one or two guys, but for the most part, I kind of let them to their own devices and let kind of the basketball be the main thing at that time. So then afterwards, after practice, sometimes I meet with some of the guys on an individual standpoint. That's an individual therapy kind of standpoint, and that's kind of what that day-to-day leans like. And then sometimes I am kind of meeting throughout practice with the team and just working with the team as a whole and not necessarily taking the individual steps. So that's kind of what the process looks like on a day-to-day basis.
I'll leave you with this as we get ready to wrap things here with Demarion Jeter, the athletic mental health and sports performance counselor here at JU. Where do you see mental health counseling continuing to go over the next couple of years? Obviously, a ton of strides have been made just in the last 5 years, but where are things going to go next? What is the next thing you hope to see from this field?
I think my biggest hope is that each team can have their own specific mental health counselor, and I think that would be really big so they can so much time dedicated to that specific sport, and that person can like travel with the team at all times, be at all practice and things like that. Because if you liken it or compare it to like an athletic trainer is always with the team at all times. So I think if we can get to the point where we can have a counselor at that time as well, and have them on the road and things of that nature, just continue to build that relationship with players in different capacities, so they continue to feel comfortable and feel like they know the person. I think that would do a lot of work for the field, a lot of work for people in general.
The importance of physical well-being and mental well-being, right? And if you can address both of those, then you're going to have someone who is as close to whole as they can be, hopefully, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us here today. Demarion Jeter, our guest here in the second segment of True Talk with Coach Mincy. And I'm excited to kind of see how this continues to grow over the next couple of years.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We will step aside. We'll be back with more after this, as we've got one segment to go here on this Monday night edition of True Talk with Coach Mincy, live on 1010XL from Bono's Barbecue, Merrill Road and 295. Back at Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road and 295. Scott Mincy, head coach Jordan Mincy, and we've got one segment for you to go, two great segments down. Absolutely incredible talk with Demarion Jeter last segment about his work as in a very important space, a space that is growing in both attention and understanding of its importance. And I think for, the entire history of the human race, we have kind of sat there and put mental health and awareness on that sort of on the back burner. And, it only took 2,000 plus years, but we've kind of finally come to a point where we're understanding that is important, just as, if not more important than the physical health in many ways. And so seeing his work and hearing about what he's done with your team, Coach, is great. And I think you highlighted one of the most significant aspects of it is just watching how your team handles adversity now. It's just so much different than it was even a year ago. You highlighted the bad call from the official or whatever, and guys turning around, walking the other way, or teammates coming up and helping out, compartmentalizing, and how important that is.
Absolutely. Again, Jeter he brings so much to the table. Since day one, he's made an impact. And the thing I respect about him so much, he's never just, hey, Coach, I got all these different answers for you. He's literally very laid back, and a lot of times, I go to him and seek out information. And, he's always got, if I don't have the answer right now, Coach, let me think on it. I'll come back and let you know.
And that's, heck, hopefully everybody listening at home takes a good lesson from that, too. You don't need to have the answer right in the moment. You're doing a little research, thinking on it is never a bad thing. All right, let's take a look at the league standings again. 4 teams tied for first: FGCU and Lipscomb North, Alabama and JU, all at 9-3. Queens and Eastern Kentucky right behind at 8-4. It is a logjam at the top of the ASUN standings with just 6 games to go. A lot of things can shake out between now and then. Our mutual friend, Gene Fournette, texted me what looked like the Charlie from It's Always Sunny board that he had scripted everything out with every scenario known to man for the rest of the way last week. And needless to say, there's a lot to be decided still. So does that make it easier to not look too far ahead, knowing that, there is so much that can change between now and then? Whereas if maybe you had a big lead in the conference at this point and you're starting to think that tournament, it's lingering around the corner.
So, we say take it one game at a time. I mean, just think about the last 2 weeks. You go from being, in first place, and then you come home and you drop 2 home games.
Yeah.
And then you drop out of first. And so you go on the road. Then you play, the last one at home. And so after this week, you're back tied for first. And so who's to say next week you may split, you may win 2, you may lose 2. But you just never know, man. So just take each game day by day. Take each practice day by day, to be honest, and try to figure out where that's going to lead you.
You and associate head coach Michael Fly in the postgame on Saturday said this the same. You're right, the messaging about one game at a time, that's what we're speaking about with the team. But I know that you can't, turn around on Friday afternoon and be like, oh, let's watch some North Alabama film for the first, that. So how much do you rely on your staff to get everything kind of prepped in the wings, waiting for you and the team so you can focus on the one game at a time, and then when it is time to move your attention to the next one, be ready to go hit the ground running?
So our associate coach and then our 2 assistants, Mike Fly, Troy Pierce, and then Mike Covington, all 3 of those guys, they all have different, areas that they're looking at, whether it's Coach Covington, he's doing the personnel for each game. Coach Fly's looking at the opposing team's defense and giving an offensive plan, and Coach Troy's doing vice versa, trying to give me the defensive plan for the upcoming games. And so the guy I really lean on the most is probably Stuckey Mosley. Stuckey, along with working out our guys, he's also in charge of doing a pre-scout. And so he's always working a game ahead. And so while we're working on Central Arkansas, Stuckey's already done with no foul. And so when I get done my computer, a lot of times he has that game, he has that foul already on there, and he has a couple key details just to be, a refresher if it's our second time playing them, or, a wealth of new information just so I can kind of have a quick glance over it and have an identity of who we're about to play with such a short turnaround with a lot of these games.
You just referenced help from 4 different guys.
Yeah.
How much has that changed from when you entered this business?
Oh, it's totally different. When you have the resources you have, the type of video, the type of technology and how it's advanced, along with the different, stats and scouting services that we use, it allows for you to get a competitive advantage. And so, a lot of times you can have those resources, but you also have to have the young people who want to put the hard work in and surround yourself with them. And so I've been blessed to have people around me this season. And in the past as well, that work hard, that understand what it takes to win at an extremely high level.
You're heading on the road for 4 straight games, and I don't need to remind you of that. Sorry, Coach. I know it is kind of the thing, the elephant in the room, if you will. But this team 5-0 on the road in conference play. There's no secret, right? But what have you found that has led to the road success?
The thing that we always talk about is, and I know it sounds weird, but it's just us. When we're on the road, it's quiet. Our guys really do enjoy being around one another. There's less distractions, and so honestly, when we get up, we're eating breakfast, we're talking, and a lot of times in this generation, you have so many young men that in their free time, they're just looking at their cell phone, right? They're constantly on Instagram, they're on TikTok, whatever it may be, they're glued to that technology in their hands, and so our guys are a little bit different. They put those phones away. They're talking to one another. They love one another. And a lot of times they're joking. I'm like, what are you guys joking about? And they're imitating Coach Fly in practice. And so it's just a throwback group when it comes to being around one another. And so for us on the road, man, sometimes, like I told our staff, it's like a field trip.
I like that analogy, a field trip, right? You're getting out of school for a little bit, right? Hey, we're here with my friends, and we're going to go experience something new and have some fun together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. Man, it makes me miss field trips back in the day, I had some fun ones growing up, certainly. So this road trip, we're into that point of the season now. You're seeing teams for the second time. Saturday was the first time seeing a team for the second time with Bellarmine. Now you got Central Arkansas, you got North Alabama, teams that you're able to take care of business at home earlier this year, but that was a long time ago, number 1, and you're playing them in a completely different environment, number 2. So can you take anything from the success the first time around, or are you treating this sort of like, hey, listen, we got to treat this almost like a new game? Yeah,
we had to treat everything like a new game. This late in the season, we just played Bellarmine for the second time. At their place, we feel like we handled them pretty well, and then they gave us a very, tough fought game our last time playing them. And so for us, they have this time of season, you have different people that are showing up. You have, certain injuries. You have certain players who didn't play the first time around, and so you just never know what you're going to come across when you lace them up.
That first game is at Central Arkansas. That is at 7:30 on Thursday. And I want to remind you again, that is part of a watch party at Strings Sports Brewery on Thursday night. 7:30 tip. Strings in Springfield. I got it right that time on the first try. It is the official launch of the Fins Up Lager, Golden Lager. For those that have been going to games at Swisher, I've seen plenty of people enjoying those courtside and in the stands, but now you can go get some while watching the Dolphins as they play on the road, hundreds of miles away in Conway, Arkansas, but you're going to feel that energy, I know, Coach, kind of pulsating from Strings over there to help cheer you and the guys on Thursday night. So that's 7:30 on Thursday, Strings Sports Brewery in Springfield. Hope to see you all out there for that watch party. And then North Alabama, 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And it is part of a tough stretch here. You got to spend a long time away from home. Certainly hope that these guys can continue to grow and find success in each other, right? You said it's just us. Well, some of that is you look around, there's nobody cheering for you. There's nobody there to have your back. When the call goes against you, everybody's going nuts. You might hear some things, right? You got to look to the guy to your left and your right, and those are the ones that have your back when it's all said and done.
Yeah, a lot of our trips, we oftentimes we say, some of these environments, they can be very hostile. And so you go in there and you say to yourself, hey, if we don't cheer for one another, we don't love one another, what chance do we have to win? And so our guys are really bought into it, unlike last season. And so it's been a blessing this year.
We want to touch on a few things before we wrap up here tonight. Tomorrow, a reminder, it is JU Day on campus, Jacksonville University, 1010XL. The partnership comes together for the auction for athletics. It runs from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. tomorrow on the airways of 1010XL. You'll hear the shows like The Drill, Helmets and Heels, XL Primetime, and The Frangie Show live from the Kinney Lounge on campus, and they are going to be part of this auction for athletics. Here's some highlights. A trip to the New York Stock Exchange. Catch a NHL game in Las Vegas, the Golden Knights, a weekend getaway in Northeast Pennsylvania, the ultimate VIP experience for an Orlando Magic home game, an all-expense-paid trip to Lake Tahoe, signed memorabilia, training sessions with JU coaches. I mean, it's what more could you ask for, Coach? You're looking like, hey, man, I might want to auction, bid on a few of these items. So
yeah, I need to throw my bid in. I need some training.
Get some training from some fellow coaches there. This all can be found if you visit JUDolphins.com. Click on the pop-up banner there. Text JU Day, all one word, JUDAY, to 76278, and you'll get it straight to your cell phone, too, if you don't want to have to go to the website as well. So that's going to be – you can start bidding now. The bidding is live and open, and then tune in to 1010XL tomorrow, where special guests are going to be featured on programming all day long. On The Drill, we'll hear D. Brown and former basketball standout D. Brown and former baseball standout Daniel Murphy on The Drill tomorrow morning. Helmets and Heels will be joined by men's lacrosse head coach John Galloway and women's lacrosse head coach Tara Singleton. On XL Primetime, this guy Jordan Mincy, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's going to be on at 2:20, and then women's basketball head coach Special Jennings will be joining Primetime as well. And then the Frangie Show will have a baseball-themed finish to the day with head coach Chris Hayes and former baseball standout and the only man to throw a no-hitter in the history of JU baseball, President Tim Cost, to wrap things up. So should be a lot of fun tomorrow. Coach, I'll be listening for you and everybody else. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. It's going to be a great day tomorrow.
You're like, I just had to sit here with this guy all night long, and now I got to go. No, it'll be a lot of fun. And these guys will, and gals, because Helmets and Heels as well, they do a great job, and really look forward to having them on campus and what is going to come together with that auction for athletics. So, again, visit JUDolphins.com or text JUDAY to 76278 right now, and the bidding is open. And we do want to thank everybody who did a part of the unbelievably successful Dolphin Dash again this year. $3,797,243 raised by 4,475 donors. I mean, an incredible effort, and that goes across the entire university. The money that came in that goes directly to students in their programs, student athletes in their programs, and every dollar goes directly to it. So tremendous to see that. I mean, it's amazing, Coach, to see the support that this community has, not just the JU community, the Jacksonville community, but the extended community because of how interconnected things are these days in good ways like this.
Yeah, ultimately it's a family environment. Just to be able to see how so many different people can come together for a great cause and be able to help one another grow is always awesome.
All right, well, that'll do it for us here this week on True Talk with Coach Mincy. We want to thank Demarion Jeter for joining us in segment 2. Want to thank R.J. Saunders for his hard work back in the 1010XL studios. And we're looking forward to JU Day on the 1010XL airwaves all day tomorrow. I'm Scott Manzi saying so long from Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road in 295. Don't forget to join us at Strings Sports Brewery on Thursday night at 7:30 for the watch party for the Central Arkansas game. And if you can't make it out to that, you can listen to the game right here on 1010XL as well. For Coach Mincy, I'm Scott Manzi saying so long. This has been True Talk with Coach Mincy from Bono's Barbecue on Merrill Road in 295, live on 1010XL.
To stay on top of your game,